Hello, my friends. We are back, and I cannot believe it has been 7 days now. I am stunned, and I know at some point that I won't need to keep track of how many days, but for now, just keeping that consistency and being like, okay, I may not know what I'm going to say, I may not know this and this and this, but I'm going to still do it. So I have a shameful confession to make. So for so many years, I did not make my bed. I figured, what's the point? I am going to get back into my bed eventually. It is inefficient. So like I grappled with I didn't make it a lot when I was young, and like my grandma was like, you need to make your bed, like your day can't get started without your bed being made, and I was like, no, what's the point? I waste all this time making my bed, and then I just have to unmake the bed just to go to bed. I'm like, why waste this time? And so then when I got a little bit older and I was a teenager, like I just loved the setup. So I enjoyed setting up the bed and making it just look beautiful with pillows and comforters and whatever not. And eventually I started getting so lazy that like I wouldn't sleep in the bed. I would sleep on top of it, and I would have just another blanket on top, because I was like, okay, this is efficient. I killed two birds with one stone. Not only does the bed aesthetically look beautiful, and all I have to do is, fold this one blanket, but it is also like I'm not wasting all this time. And then eventually, like that carried on. I kept making my bed, or not making my bed. And then even as I got married and had kids, like eventually, like I was one of those people that, because probably of the turbulent, tumultuous start my son had, like it was just like once he was home. So he was supposed to be born on March 3rd, 2000, and he ended up being born December 28th, 1999. So he was about 10 weeks early, and there was no indications that he was going to be born early. I did all the prenatal pills, even though I was so sick. I was so sick. I would still, do everything by the book. Literally, the What to Expect When You Are Expecting book, I read chapter by chapter, week by week. And, I studied this, like I was going to be ready. So at 30 weeks, like I remember that day, it was shortly after Christmas, and I thought I was just fatigued because it was Christmas. It was the holidays, setting up Christmas. I had just bought a new condo, like getting moved in. The excitement of like, oh, next Christmas I'll have this baby. And so I just thought I was tired. And so at that time I was still working with my dad. I was running the loan company, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to not go into work today. And so I called in and I just said, no, I'm not feeling well. I'll come in tomorrow. And I remember like laying around and watching TLC, A Baby Story. And, I think it was TLC. I think that's what it was called. And it was just like every half an hour, it was just like me trying to immerse myself in this situation that was going to come months down the road. But so kind of like gave me some form of like like I said, I do a lot of studying. Like if it was, I was going to the gym, then I studied going to the gym. I called 10 different gyms and said, what do people wear? What do they bring? Do they put it in a locker? Do they keep it with them in class? I so much as went to like the parking lot and watched people go in. I know, absolute stalker, but it's what I needed to do to feel comfortable when I walked in. Then once I walked in, it was like, okay, now what? I'm like, okay, let me look around and time to go. And then next time I'm going to come in and I'll actually go into the classroom now that I know where the classrooms are. And when I get in the classroom, I'll go to the most approachable face and be like, I've never been here before. What do I do? Is this hard? And I did that. And I still remember the lady. I still dance with her, and I appreciate she was very kind and was like, oh, just move along. And like I said, it was pretty easy workout in comparison to what I do now, and I was dying. But it's just part of like my studying. If I study something enough, I feel confident in it. If I feel confident in it, I could do it. And not that I can't do it if I'm not confident, just is an extra challenge, right? So I just like to feel prepared. I like to know what options, like even in the baby story, like there were times where people had to have emergency C-section. I mean, it wasn't like just all, the wonderful stories. Never did I really recall, because I didn't watch too many episodes at this point, but did I recall ever my scenario happening? But anyways, to make a very, very long story short, which I'm so good at, right? You've figured that out by now. No. But anyways, so I was watching this show on repeat, and I just didn't feel well. I didn't feel well at all. And I remember calling my doctor, and he was just like, I'm like, I kind of have cramping. And he was like, it's just what these things, they're called Braxton Hicks. It's just like false labor. It's getting you ready for, sorry, it seems a little off. I don't know. It's getting you ready for the actual thing. You'll be fine. Da 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 da. And I said, okay. And then I remember Chris came home and it was raining, and my dad were reorganizing, like, where we were going to put the office and where we were going to put his nursery. And so my dad had given us this desk, and Chris had went and picked it up. And when he was trying to move it, it got stuck, and he just physically, it was now raining. The desk was getting ruined, and he just physically could not like lift it out of this groove. He needed help. And so he comes in and he was like, I need your help. I need you to help me pick up this desk. I'm like, I don't feel good. I'm pregnant. Like, I can't be picking up a desk. And, we went back and forth around it. And then, at that time I was very challenged to say no. And like, I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I just was so careful, so worried about everybody else. I was like, fine, so I begrudgingly put on clothes. I go outside in the freezing cold and the rain. And he goes, only thing I need you to do is I just need you to help me pick it up out of this groove. Just lift it, in a truck bed, like he opened the bed, it got stuck in the groove. He's like, I just need you to pick it up there. And I remember going to pick it up, and I just felt like something not right, like a rip. And I just was like, no. And I remember going inside and like panicking, and I ended up spotting. And so I ended up calling the doctor again, and he was like, well, maybe you have some, a UTI, and just go to the hospital. They'll check you out and then send you home. If you need medication, you'll get some antibiotics and you'll be fine. So I remember we were driving there, and I was thinking, oh yeah, like the next time we make this drive, it's going to be like, we're going to have a baby, and it's going to be like the real thing. And we're going to be like, move out of the way, cars, my wife's in labor, thinking it was going to be like these TV shows and things like that. And I remember we got there, and, they checked me in, and, everything was like fine. And, for some reason, what stands always out in my mind is Chris had this handheld game of Family Feud, and it was pissing. It was so damn loud. And just the sounds of this little video game thing were pissing me off. I just was like I just remember like looking towards him and being like, I just want to pick that damn thing up and throw it out the window. Like, why is it so loud? And I remember at one point being like, can you put like a blanket over the speaker or something? Like, it is so loud. Like, it was just on my nerves. I was uncomfortable. I was in pain. I was just aggravated. And they do like the testing on me, and I'm laying there, and I remember like what some late night show comes on, and I'm just laying there watching it, waiting for this test to come back. And it comes back, and she's like, no, you're fine. No infections or anything. So you can go home. We just have to check you like as a protocol before you leave, and to see like if you're dilated. And so she checks me, and I've never seen this face before, and I haven't seen it since. Her face, just literally every single color every piece of color just completely drained. She was as white as a ghost, and she was like, she goes back in to check again, her face white as a ghost, and then she just, sticks her hand out and is like, it stands up very affirmatively, and she just said, you're gonna have this baby. And I was like, what? Like, yeah, ha ha ha. But I knew from her face this was not a ha ha ha. But I said, yeah, ha ha ha. In like 3 months. And she was like, no, you're going to have this baby now. And I was like, but I can't. My Lamaze starts January 7th. So I'm not able to have a baby now. And I'm only at week 30 in the what to expect when you're expecting book. So I'm not really sure how to do anything else up like past week 30. So we can't do this. And she's like, no. And then all of a sudden it was like, she went somewhere and it was just like code. Weird lights came on in the room. People came running into the room. The next thing you know, it was shot. They were giving me these shots saying, this shot's to open up the lungs. This shot's to this. This one's to delay the labor. This one's this and this and this and this. And I was just like, is this a nightmare? Like, this cannot be happening. Like, this cannot be happening. And I'm so unprepared for this. So it was just like, I was absolutely in shock. And, I'm like, how can this happen? They're like, how are you in labor to 8 centimeters and you were just sitting here? And I was like, I don't know. You tell me. I have never done this before. Like, you're the nurses and doctors. Tell me. And so that was at about 11 something. And it delayed the labor until 4. So he was born at like 4:07 a.m. And yeah, it was just, they prepared me for the worst. They said that he was going to be disabled, that he likely would not be able to breathe on his own. He was going to be extremely small. He may not survive. There could be major neurological damage. Just the worst case scenarios. He will most likely have lifelong learning disabilities. You name it. It was just the worst things that you could ever imagine now being thrown on you, on top of the fact that you're about to have what they called a crash course at Lamaze and having birth or giving birth. And I just remember feeling like in shock. I remember feeling like cheated. I remember feeling like just so sad. I remember feeling so scared. Like, are all these things going to come true? Is this really happening? And, I look over and I'm looking over, and at this point I met Chris in March. We were married in July. This is now December. I'm like 99 is going out with a bang. Like, number 9 is my favorite number. But I was like, this is like, I got married, bought a house, got pregnant and had a baby all within a year. And it was just like, what is happening here? Like, this is like a weird nightmare I need to wake up from. And yeah, it was just absolutely terrifying. And then, I'll spare you all the details of his delivery, but it was definitely memorable. And he, ended up being born larger than they thought he would be. So he was 3 pounds, 3 ounces. But all that testing that they needed to do, because he was born early, revealed that he did have multiple heart defects. His heart was rotated and backwards, and that just added another layer of like worry and concern, and would he be able to survive this experience? Like, it just was so awful, because you have in your mind, right, like, when you're playing with your dolls, or you just have a fantasy, like, this is what it's going to be like when you're a mom and you're going to have this perfect pregnancy, and then you're gonna have a lovely baby shower and all your friends and family are gonna come, and it's just gonna be this celebratory thing. And again, like just like when, like for me, like I had always envisioned my wedding and it'd be this beautiful gathering, based on love. And it was like we eloped at the Chapel of the Bells, and I didn't even know my family was gonna come, and they came. Like Chris had invited them, and we just thought, I just thought, oh, we're just getting married, we'll have a real wedding later. And for Chris, this was like the real wedding. This was the deal. So he invited my dad, my mom, my grandma, and his mom. I think that was all that was there. And my brother was like in Mexico or something. So, and my sister was there. She was our little flower girl. But like, it was just like, here was like this other like experience that like I had planned and fantasized about that was just going completely awry. So he ends up being born early, and then he's born right before the year 2000. So like there's a big baby boom. The hospital is full. And then here's my kid in the NICU, and I'm just there. I will not leave the hospital. At one point I had to, because there were so many babies. There wasn't like enough room for me, but I would just stay in the NICU from morning till night. Like like 3, 4, 5, like they would be like, you need to go home. I'm like, no, I'm not going home. Like I am not going on home until he comes home with me. And it was just like, like in some ways it was just torture. Like you cannot explain unless you've been there. And I have known, because my cousin later on, she ended up having a preemie as well. And the way they provide care now is like far superior than it was in 1999. I mean, they did a great job. I am so grateful and thankful for everything they did, but it was absolutely torture and cruel. Every hour this kid needed heart medications. They were constantly taking blood draws, so it wasn't like he had a line in. It was just if you look at him still to this day, 24 years later, there are so many scars on his hands, there's so many scars on his feet, on his arms, on his legs. Like I just saw this, just every whimper and every cry, and like, and even in order to eat, he didn't have a sucking reflex yet. He wasn't supposed to be out of the womb yet. And so like they had to like do what was called gavage feeding. And so it was like he had a feeding tube down his nose, but they didn't keep it. It was like every time in and every time out, every time in. And he was this tiny little thing, and he was in heart failure. And so I don't know if you've ever seen a baby in heart failure. It's not a pretty thing. And it was like literally even at rest, even when he was sleeping, he was constantly panting, and it was just so like torture. It was just torturous. And to like have to like, if you wanted to hold your baby, you had to like ask somebody, and it was like, you had to wait, because there's only like a few nurses. Then because it's the NICU, I think it was like 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 if it got crazy. But and most of the babies, they all spoke unspoken language. Not they didn't all freak out at once, but it was like you had to wait. And back then they didn't do a lot of the like kangaroo care, and like it was just like kind of like a hassle. You had to unplug everything and get them off the monitors and then put them back on. And so I would feel guilty like to even say like, can I? And then once I had him in my or he was sleeping, so I would kind of just like open the little isolette and put my hand in, and then let him smell me and know I was there, even though it probably felt like I wasn't. And yeah, it was just really hard. It was hard to see and be so scared. And at that time, like, prior to that, like my friends were so much of my world. But then when I suddenly became a mom, it was like, well, my friends and I, all we did was like drink, hang out. We did other stuff too, but it was like that whole life I needed to like just like cut myself off from, because now I needed to focus all my energy on being a mom and stuff. And so like my friends still kind of came around, but not really. And then my family at the same time too, like they had promised me, like throughout growing up, like they would say like, especially my grandma, she would say, in life, things will happen. And if you die with the one good friend, you're lucky, but your family will always be there for you. Your family will always be there when there's any trouble. And I remember just sitting in the NICU and I was alone, and I would look out the window and I was alone. Like nobody was there, and it was so heartbreaking. And I remember finally, like one time, breaking down, because it's like, you think about that, like he did not get to come home until I think it was 1 day or 2 days before his due date. So he did not come home until, I believe it was March 1st or 2nd. And all those days from December 28th all the way until then, like I was just praying and worrying and there, and Chris was at work, and so he would come for like a couple hours sometimes, like after work or whatever, but it was primarily I was just there alone. I had the nurses and the doctors would come, but it was just so scary, and there was no like internet or anything like that to help me and be like, or it wasn't like sitting on a phone. I didn't have that stuff, you know. It was like maybe had a baby magazine, but it was like torture because there was like a window, and you would see like where it was and where his isolate was. It was a chair. I had a chair and I had a window that looked out, and it looked out to there's 2 elevators, and coming off the elevators, you would see the mama would come off with her big belly, and you know, the husband in the facials, and you know, the husband's kind of frantic and trying to get there, and you know, she's just trying to be stoic, or sometimes, you know, it was like screaming, you know, like you saw all kinds of different, you know, women deal with their pain and their worry in different ways. And but I would see them come in, and then they'd be there a couple days, and then you'd see the cart with all the balloons and the flowers and the teddy bears, and you see the mama in the wheelchair with her little baby is cradled in her arms, and they leave off the elevator. And it was like just torture sitting in there, and or seeing other babies come in the NICU and leave. As it had turned out, once Bradley did finally leave, they said that he was the longest standing preemie they've ever had, because typically, like they were saying, their level care wasn't as high as like they were wanted to send him to at that time, which I probably should have just fought and had him sent to Stanford, but they wanted to send him to San Francisco. And I was just like, that's even worse, because I have to go this, and they're not going to let me stay as much, you know, like it was going to be really difficult. So him being in Millbrae was a little bit closer to home, so I could shower and then come back. It was just a really tough thing. He had to have multiple blood transfusions. I'd see, at one time I came in and I was like, no, what is this? Like there was literally an IV giving him a blood transfusion on his head. Like, I didn't even know you can do something like that. And I was like hysterical. I was like, no, you need to take this out. And they're like, then that's going to hurt him. I'm like, okay, well, you can't take him out, but don't you ever. And they're like, well, it was the easiest one. All of his other veins were blown and compromised. I'm like, you need to warn me before I walk in and see something like it was just, I mean, I could spend hours, you know, talking about the moments, the things that he went through. So I'll finish with just that experience. He ended up coming home, and so he was only 3 pounds 3 ounces, but he had gotten down to 2 pounds 3 ounces because he was so sick. He was constantly, you think about it, like he was burning some major calories. And so, yeah, anyways, at the end, the whole point of the story was he did end up coming home in March. And then eventually he had to go back to the hospital and have open heart surgery. But I will save that story for another time. But yeah, so yeah, once he did come home, I didn't let that kid go. He was like, wherever I go, he goes. My buddy and me. He like slept in my bed. He like just was like glued to my hip. Like I was not leaving him. And it was really challenging once he got home, because every 1.5 hours he needed to have some medication. He was on all these digoxin and let me see if I can remember it. It was started with a V. There was a couple other medications he needed for his heart, because he was in heart failure, while we were trying to get him to grow for his heart surgery. So yeah, so it was a really trying time, and I barely slept, because You think about it, he needs medications every hour and a half. Well, you don't just wake up and then just shoot the medicine. It's like you wake up, you got to change his diaper, give him the medicine, you got to draw it out, you got to say, is this the right amount? Double check, triple check it, and when Chris was home, I'd be like, can you take a shift? Like, I need a solid 3 hours sleep or something. Can I just have that? Like, I was just running on fumes and then worried, right? Like, you see blue lips, like you're watching him pant, like he's the cutest damn thing in the world, but like he is in hell, like it's gotta be pain, it's gotta be torturous, right? Like, but he was a super smiley kid. Like, I remember, and he looked like a little old man, and so I used to always say, like, I may not be around when you are a little old man again, but I know what you're going to look like, because you looked like that. And I remember, like, when we would go out, and I remember, like, just even being at the supermarket, have him in the, like, little car seat thing and on the shopping cart. And I don't even know, I swear, I'm like thinking right now, I feel like I never see people doing that anymore. I don't know if I just don't make it to the supermarket when other people are there, but like, I feel like that was just like a daily part of my life. Like, okay, I had the car seat on like maybe luckily they have like food delivery. I definitely would have utilized that service, to not have to take my baby to the nasty grocery store. But I remember just so many people would come up and they were like, he is the happiest baby I've ever seen. So despite whatever he was going through, he was so stinking cute and happy all the time. So it made me happy. So we definitely made the best out of whatever his situation was. And, I don't even know where we started with this, but that'll be my story for today. So yeah, I have had my oldest one, that's my oldest one's start to life, and he is quite the resilient guy. But yeah, like they said, he was the longest standing patient to ever stay in the NICU there. He was super blessed. We had one neonatologist doctor, and I like literally credit her for saving his life, because I remember once I was sitting there and she was like, oh, do you want to go and get a coffee? I was like, oh no, I don't drink coffee. Plus I'm nursing. Like, no, I can't. And she's like, no, do you want to go get coffee? And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like I say, I don't say no. And I was kind of confused. I was like, what? And I remember getting in the elevator with her, and she was like, what I'm about to tell you, I can lose my license for, lose my job or something like that. She said, who they want him to see to have fix his heart is not, you should not. Like, he is too new and he may not survive. And she just was very blunt. And then she said, but I have an incredible resource at UCSF, and he already knows about the patient. I've already talked to him about the patient, so he's willing to take him on, and I highly suggest you go see him. So I went to go see him. Well, as it turns out, this highly acclaimed neurologist was her husband. They had different last names. I later on found this out. And the surgeon at that time that was operating was like one of the top in the entire world for pediatrics. He probably still is. He's no longer at UCSF. He's at Stanford now, but he is like a major pioneer. He people were flying in all over the world to have surgery. So we really lucked out with the experience there. And I'm so grateful. Like, every day, like, I think about like how lucky I am that not only did he defy every single odd that like these doctors had prophesized as just like a warning. I appreciate that. Like, but like he has like kicked butt. He didn't have any learning disabilities or anything like that. He went to Berkeley, like he got great grades. He was always like a team captain. He played sports, like he's lived his best life. So yeah, I think like life is full of these crazy stories, and like what you can take from them are what's the important thing. And then, from this, I just take like really just treasure what you have, like the mundane, the like, even though like I didn't have that perfect experience with like becoming a mom, it still was my perfect experience, and it turned out great, because I know in some other world, in some other universe, like I totally could have had a different experience. And he's absolutely amazing, and I wouldn't change a single thing about him, except for maybe if he would just clean his room a little bit more. He used to be super clean and now he's not, but beyond that, like, he's absolutely amazing and I adore him. He is so funny and smart, and yeah, I wouldn't want to even know what life was like in this world without him. So I'm going to leave it there, and I hope that you guys have a great day, and I'd love to hear your stories, or any of you out there like preemie moms or just moms or dads. And I wanted to say this, I felt so bad because I was thinking last night, I was like, oh my God, when I was talking, yeah, I am not only like to the moms, because I fully get, I was raised by a single dad, and my grandma, who's like my bestie, was raised by her grandma and her auntie. So I know there's like so many unconventional like families out there, and like I don't want to negate any of like I say mom, but I like your mom if you're momming, like, or you know, you're like nurturing, or you're taking care of, or you're raising, you're stepping up, like whoever you are, cousin, friend, you know, family member, foster parent, like adoptive parent, dads, grandmas, like I fully get that, like, it is not just a perfect, you know, TV show and or a book or anything like that. So props to you too, because you guys all, everybody needs self-care who is caring for anybody else, you know, whether they're young or old. Because even when I was caring for my auntie with the cancer, I needed self-care. I needed love for myself because I was depleted. So yeah. So okay, have a great day. Love you. Bye.